What's up, everybody? We are live, and we're here for another SEM Rush live webinar. It's the 1st of December, so pinch punch, first of the month to everyone watching. I'm Tristan Jarman, your host for today. What am I? Co-founder of Purple Smudge Digital down here in sunny and slightly dark Brighton. I'm being joined today by Aaron Dix, the Managing Director of Impression. Aaron, how are you doing today?
Yeah, very good, thank you. Yeah, like you said, it's a bit dark and gloomy here in December in the UK, isn't it?
It is. I wait for that fateful day of the 21st December when that's the shortest day and we can start looking forward to some extra longer days. Just whilst we're waiting for everyone to join the stream today, jump in the comments, guys. Let us know where you're commenting from. It's always great to see how much of a worldwide audience we've got. We've got people from Italy joining, Berlin, Germany, Oslo. As I say, I'm here in Brighton. Where are you based, Aaron? Is it Nottingham? Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm up in Nottingham, up in the Midlands of the UK. Yeah, we do have an office based in London as well, just for our sort of roaming strategists when we're out and about. But obviously this year has been a bit of an interesting one. So we're all based at home at the moment, all over the UK, really.
Fantastic. And so just whilst we're waiting for everyone to join, as I say, just a little introduction. As I say, I'm Tristan Jarman, co-founder of Purple Smudge Digital in Brighton. A few little weird facts about me. I like surfing, I like my VW camper van and going away with my girlfriend and my little French bulldog, who's awesome, Frank the Frenchie. Aaron is Managing Director of Impression, as I say. I love this. You're a web developer by trade, which turned to technical SEO. Now, I kind of want to give you a hug because most people are either a web developer or an SEOer, and I don't know, jump in the comments, people. I could be wrong, but usually you don't find the two worlds that collide like that. So I find that amazing and awesome. So Aaron, just tell us a bit about yourself and why we're here today.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so yeah, Aaron Dix, I'm a Managing Director, co-founder of Impression. We're a digital agency based here in the UK. As you just mentioned, yeah, I got into web development almost as a bit of a hobby when I was younger. Did a bit of it through school and computing courses and whatnot, and went on then to study marketing. And it's only then when I was working in marketing, I really sort of found out what SEO was and digital marketing more broadly. And for me, really, that's where the two worlds collided. At the time, I taught myself PHP and I was building WordPress sites. And then obviously I wanted those sites to have more traffic. So when I looked into more marketing activity to make them perform better, that's where SEO really came in. And I managed to get myself a junior role part-time at a SEO agency up in Leeds, actually, in the UK. And that was a really great start to the career. And yeah, like you said, you don't often find SEO and web developer in the same person. I don't profess to being an expert in either of those anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm definitely drawn to the more technical side of things. And more recently, as I'll go on to sort of explain, certainly the broader strategy piece as well. Some of the stuff we'll cover today is looking at how competitive analysis can help build your marketing strategy. I'm going to take everyone on a bit of a journey, as like Impression's own journey as to how we've come to offer strategy as a service, essentially, and the need and how that's arisen. Touch on what strategy actually is and what it's not, and then run through some, just a whole series of slides around points that we look at, and then obviously how we use the SEM Rush software to inform that as well.
Fantastic. Well, we've got a few other people in the comments saying now that they are also web devs turned SEO. So welcome to the party, everybody. It looks like we are got a reasonable amount of people. So if you're happy, Aaron, I will hand over the reins, grab my cup of tea and hand over the presentation to you. Sorry, before we start, I should say, if you're watching this live right now, please, if you've got a question, pop it in the comments box and I will get that to Aaron as quick as possible. And likewise, if you're watching this back pre-recorded, please pop a comment in the comments section and we'll try to get back to you as quick as possible. And obviously you can come and find us over social media and hunt us down for any questions. But without further ado, Aaron, I'll hand it over to you, sir.
That's awesome. Thanks, Tristan. Yeah, so I mean, I've obviously given myself a little bit of a brief introduction, but my name's Aaron Dix. I'm here today to talk about competitive analysis in marketing strategy. I'm going to talk a little bit about how that need has arisen here in our own agency at Impression, but then also talk more broadly around where we can get this insight from, what sorts of data is out there, and then looking at how we've turned to the SEMrush suite of products to find that information. I won't dwell on this too long. Many of you have just heard it, but yeah, I did come from a background in web development. That was self-taught, and I formalized some of my sort of education, I guess, at university. But it's really there where I got into SEO. I blended that technical web developer skill set into marketing. I wanted more traffic for the sites I was working on, and landed a full-time job well, it's a part-time job turned full-time job in SEO. Shortly after university, about 8 years ago now, that led me and a co-founder to form Impression. And since then, we've been working on all aspects of digital marketing and across a whole number of sectors too, which we'll touch on in just a second. So today, I'll give you a brief introduction to Impression. Obviously, that's not that important to too many of you, but the reason I want to do that is because it shows our development over time and how we've needed to offer digital strategy and broader channel insights basically into our offer to stay relevant to clients. We'll define digital strategy, take a look at what insights are actually out there, where they are, how we can find them. We'll take a look at the holistic view of your market. We'll run through some of the SEMrush tools that we use at Impression and how we apply those, and just touch on a bit of a summary and a roundup, and obviously hang around for some Q&A here with myself and Tristan too. So without further ado, cool. So yeah, a little bit of an introduction to Impression here. So how has the strategy conversation came about at Impression? Well, we founded the company in 2012. We've grown from a small startup to an established national player in SEO, PPC, PR, and such like all those related digital execution services. We work with brands across the UK and beyond on their digital marketing strategy. We help businesses make more money online through strategic digital marketing. So that's across paid, owned, and earned media. And we've tied this together with our strategic offering, our strategic consultancy offered by our strategists and our consultants. We usually work with established businesses to help them grow further in a market they're already in. But more recently, we've also done a lot of market entry into new markets too. But I know there's a whole audience, a whole different range of people in the audience here today. What I'm going to be talking about today and the tools and the approach would be applicable whether you're new to market or in an established market or entering a new one. So it's a whole approach that's broadly applicable to businesses of all industries. So we've got some experience across B2B and B2C. We've worked in FMCG, so fast moving consumer goods, things like home improvement, home and garden, fashion, fast fashion, high fashion, home electronics, music, all sorts of different industries. A few brands you might recognize depending on where in the world you are. A few obviously you won't not. We've worked for charities not for profit and sort of those in environmental concerns too. And we've had the privilege of being recognised for our work in a variety of different awards. So notably in the UK, at the very least, the Drum Awards, we won a Digital Strategy Award off the back of some of what I'm going to talk to you today. And we've also been recognised on the EU stage for a few different channel-specific services too. We are based in the Midlands of the UK, but over time, we've grown our business to work with clients across the world. Predominantly that's in English-speaking countries, but we've had the fortune of working across many European brands too, and obviously that brings together quite a compact, quite a high volume of different languages in quite a small, compact space. So that's been a great experience. So I guess why is that important? I've just ran through that. It's because our approach and our service and the needs of our clients has changed over time. The typical client size that we'd work with has grown drastically. So we used to work with just small to medium businesses, or the small side of those, in the Midlands in the UK. And that's now grown over time to include household names and international brands, some of which you may have recognised. Our clients are increasingly becoming multi-channel clients for us as well. So previously, where we would have delivered just paid media or just paid search or SEO, for example, they're now benefiting from multiple services from us. And as a result, we're having to now stitch these together. Don't get me wrong, we obviously don't have to, we want to. We've got the pleasure of working with our clients on this, but we need to now pull these together and integrate further with ourselves, other channels, and external parties too. Increasingly, as well as we've grown, our client contacts have also leveled up, essentially. So we now work with digital directors, heads of marketing, heads of digital marketing, external consultants that are brought in for the very purpose of digital transformation, of which we're a key part. So we're now not long. Let me get my words out. We're now no longer just working with business owners. So our level of sophistication is having to increase a lot as well. Our clients want to know more about our clients want to know a lot more about what they're doing as well online. So not just channel performance, but also how that's impacting their market share, how one channel is having an impact on another, and what their growth is relative to their competitors. So insights, insights is a bit of a buzzword that we're hearing a lot about, and we've always wanted to have better answers for. And we've done a lot of searching over the years to refine what that looks like right now. And I'm sure, we're not there just yet, but we've done a lot of work, and obviously some of that I can share today. Insights can be both internal and external. It can be based on channel performance. It can be based on position in the market. And we obviously need to know how these are all changing. So the requirement of all of the above has meant that our offer to our clients or to our prospects has had to evolve to stay relevant. And the consequence of that is we've moved from an execution-only agency where we'll just work on channel by channel to now a strategy and execution agency where we'll do our best to set the strategy and work on the strategy with our clients, to partner with them, and then to go on to service those that we can, working with external partners, in-house teams, the marketing managers themselves, for example, to get that work done. Strategy is a bit of a word that's thrown around quite a lot. You can have an SEO strategy, a paid search strategy, a PPC strategy, display strategy, and all sorts of content strategy, for example. But I think it's really important to understand what a strategy can mean. This is an amalgamation of different definitions that I've put together, but there's many out there, and you can look at those for yourselves. But the marketing strategy is really setting the overall direction and scope of the expected marketing activity. So it's manifested in a vision of the end result, not necessarily the steps of how to get there. And it should be measured via objectives, and those objectives themselves should be measurable in a way that if you are on your way to achieving those. Vision obviously has connotations over to the brand sort of vision as well. It doesn't have to be something you can actually achieve, but it should be the North Star, the guiding principle that will pull everyone in the same direction to make sure that marketing activity is correct. It's not just a statement. It can include suggestions of channel strategies and things like that too. But broadly speaking, when we're talking about strategy, we want to understand the much broader, bigger picture and in the long term too. So a good strategy can't exist in a silo. It needs wider buy-in across the team, across the business, and across your external partners. You need to look at competitor activity. So what are your competitors doing and where are they doing it? You also need to think about top-level channel considerations too. So where do you want to be seen? Where's good for positioning to be visible? And on different channels, in which formats do you want to be visible to? So these are all good considerations that form a great overall marketing strategy. You want to consider external implications, and then what the implications of those, external implications on what you're doing, and then also what the implications of those are onto your measurement. How can you accurately measure whether or not you're on target? Are there any bigger macro changes happening that might influence that? And obviously in digital marketing right now, for example, we've got the whole disappearing of cookies. So that's a good one to factor in as well. Frameworks don't work for everybody. These are digital marketing frameworks, but we've done this for ourselves recently, actually, as part of this evolution of our service. And we actually used a number. Some of them we used were the PESTLE, SOSTAC, and the STP. So PESTLE looks at political, I'm going to do this on the spot now, political, environmental, societal, technological, legal, and environmental issues that might be impacting your brand or your digital performance. So in there, clearly, we've got some political and technical issues around data privacy and the browser controls that are being introduced. You may have others depending on what industry you're in. There's other marketing strategy frameworks like the SOSTAC model as well, or slightly more basic, the STP, the segmentation targeting model too. So it might be worth looking at some of these strategy models to see if they work for you, and whether they give you any ideas that might inspire a different approach. So yeah, as I said,
sorry, Aaron, just to cut you off there. Just quickly, as we're talking about what could be new sort of methodologies for people, where can people kind of leave this webinar and go and find out more about the SOSTAC approach or PESTLE, as you were just discussing? Is there anywhere particular we could send anyone?
I mean, many of these models are sort of long-standing business school strategies. So, I mean, Google obviously is a great starting point for these, and they're very graphical. Some of these models too, that you can almost print them out and write on them. So I'd recommend a good bit of wider reading. This might feel like overkill for some people, depending on what stage of business you're at. It may be something you've already done in a different format, perhaps. So I'd look at the headings of each of these and see whether or not you can group some common themes, some perhaps, I mean, obviously even a SWOT analysis, for example, could be considered one of these frameworks. So look for familiar issues or challenges or opportunities that thinking like this will give you. And yeah, see how they might actually impact your, say, 3-term or 5-year term or 3-year term vision as to what the marketing should look like. Yeah, I mean, the point really, I guess I'm trying to get to here is that without a strategy, with just a plan, a channel plan, for example, what you're doing will continue almost indefinitely forever. Only a strategy that looks externally and takes into consideration broader market issues, technological issues, significant competitive activity, be that new entrants or takeovers, anything like that. Only by taking into account those broader factors will you actually be able to make big decisions. And it's those big decisions that are indicative of a great strategy. So I put here on the slide, big investments, step changes, or even pivots. So these are the things I'd look out for as being a good indicator as a good strategy. I'm not saying you have to have one of these, have a good strategy, but these are certainly indicative of the fact that you've looked into it enough to understand that actually what you're doing today, next week, and next month shouldn't be what you're also doing in 12 or 24 months' time, because a lot of things are changing. And if you're focused on your plan and your short-termism, then actually you're never going to be able to adapt quick enough to these threats that are, all these threats are on the horizon. And if you think long and hard enough about the technological challenges, or perhaps how you need to speak with your customers or find them online, for example, all those challenges are there. You've got zero-click search, you've got growing ad space on SERPs, increased competitiveness on social, squeeze on attribution and measurement through browser technology. There's all sorts of different things that are happening in the market, and they're all there to be discovered. So those who are thinking more actively about these right now will be able to put themselves in the best position, really. So I think the strategy here, the strategy component, will really grow long-term value, whereas a plan, might not. So a plan, just to summarize here, plan I've put here is like the day-to-day work. It's the always-on activity. It's things you did yesterday, you're going to do today, you're going to do next week. It's the channel-specific work, overcoming most channel challenges. So, for example, we just obviously had Black Friday, Cyber Monday yesterday. Just because competitors are doing one thing, you reacting to that, that's great channel work. You need to do that. You need to secure your sales, whatever it might be, see off that threat. But just because you've reacted well, react there is the key word really. Just because you reacted well doesn't necessarily mean you've got a great strategy in place. If you had a great strategy in place, perhaps you wouldn't have been caught out by that competitive action in the first place. Obviously you may have been, especially in such a competitive weekend. But yeah, that's what I'm getting at here. It's overcoming most of the challenges. Really, that's just plan work. That's having a contingency plan. That's your marketing plan. Working towards and hitting channel targets. Again, marketing plan work. You've got your objectives that are set very high level in your strategy, and getting through the nitty gritty, each individual little objective, ticking it off. That's marketing plan work. So I'll put here, it's the practical execution of the marketing strategy. Few people may be familiar with the graphic on the right here. So it's the OKR methodology versus maybe SMART goal methodology. But yeah, what I'm trying to do on this slide is translating strategy into digital marketing. Let's make this a little bit more tangible. Depending on what role you and the audience have in your organization, you may not have full control over your business strategy or your marketing strategy, or even you may not have direct control over which channels you're active in, for example. But you should have good visibility of your objectives, and your objectives should be measurable. Otherwise, you may be being set up to fail. There's a couple of ways you can set measurable objectives. There's more than what I've listed here, but you could take a leaf out of Google's playbook and other sort of big tech companies. They use this OKR framework, where you set an objective, which doesn't necessarily have to be measurable, but the key results individually ladder into that, and they are all measurable. You could also set SMART goals as your objectives too. So they must be specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. And that allows you to understand in either format whether or not you're progressing in your plan towards that strategic objective. But even if you can't influence your overall strategy or even set your objectives, you should be able to influence, at the very least, the channels you use, the formats you advertise on, and the budgets that you allocate between certain channels. You might not be able to influence your overall budget, that might be set, but you can certainly individually adjust the allocations. So by channels, what I mean here is you need to consider on which channel or for which channel would which persona that you're trying to target hang out on, or which ones should you choose based on other either best practice or even habits, for example. Just because paid search is great, and I've got a brief example on this later, does it mean you should always use paid search? It's got its position in the funnel. You may or may not be familiar with the sort of marketing funnel model, the AIDA. I know Tristan and I were talking about this just before. So the AIDA funnel, awareness, interest, decision, and then action, sort of explains how at the top of the funnel, people may not know who you are. The audience is typically quite cold. They may not even understand the benefits of the product type that you sell. In the middle of the funnel, they might be considering it, but you really need to sell your specific benefits. They might be in market, taking some sort of Google Ads language. They might be in market for a new car, but they might not know the exact benefits of your car. Or even if they know your car, they might not know the benefits of the sport range, for example. And at the bottom of the funnel, clearly they want to take action, direct. So they might be taking a search, for example, for a specific keyword, and you want to capture that and make the most of it. And that's obviously where paid search plays a really great part. But paid search as a top of the funnel activity is really quite difficult to measure. We've got a question here from the team. So we're a small specialist tour operator with 3 owner-operators. Our guests are drawn from an international market. As SEO becomes more complex, where should we focus our efforts? So this is a really good question, Tim, so thank you. I guess, like every good SEO, I'd have to start by answering that with it depends. But really consider where each channel fits into the marketing mix. Consider what your individual skill sets are and time you have available, or budgets you have available to outsource to a freelancer or an agency or something like that, and try to understand where past customers have come from as well. Clearly, you're wanting to diversify where your customers come from. That's the benefit and the purpose of this marketing activity. But it might be that actually very few of your customers come through digital marketing right now. It might be referral, for example. It's quite a big question to answer all at once, but SEO takes some time for an investment to pay off. Paid search, the gratification is almost instant. And then there's different channels that have different lead times all in between. So, for example, PR or display advertising could take a little bit longer, or instant perhaps. Consider where you can put most of your, where you can make the most impact. And that might be in copywriting, it might be in speaking to the press, it might be running some social adverts, or it might be just working, not even in digital. It might be worth looking at partnerships or referrals from past customers and making the most out of that. Depending on where your tours operate, there might be a good amount of search for those specific locations or that specific tour type. And actually, that's part of the SEMrush tool set. You could do some keyword research to understand whether there is a high search demand. And if there is, you could consider creating landing pages on your website specific to those keywords to do some sort of basic content-led SEO, or you could consider some paid ads as well that would drive people directly to those pages just around specific exact match search terms. More than happy to take more questions on that at the end, but I think I could probably talk for a whole hour or two just on that question on its own. I guess, Tristan, do you have any thoughts on that particular question?
No, I think you covered it quite well. But yeah, as you say, because I'm quite conscious of time as well, not to sort of go off myself on the subject. So
it's quite easy to,
I think you can't. Yeah, as I always say, the hour zips by in these webinars, and sometimes I think I could do these for 2 or 3 hours, and I'm waffling already. So back to you, Aaron.
Great. Okay, cool. So that's channels I was just covering anyway. So we're looking here about matching channels to your personas, your target audience, making sure that you're in the right place, not just doing paid search because everyone does it. Formats. So this is considering whether or not you want to be doing just text ads, for example, on paid search, or whether or not you can afford or have the capability of doing some image or video ads across social media or video. Consider what that looks like and consider the implications as well of a more visual advert. Over time, visual ads are likely to drive a little bit more brand awareness as well and launch you into doing sort of brand campaigns off the back of doing some maybe retargeting campaigns or even product level campaigns. So getting ready to do image and video content is a nice launch pad to sort of broadly move yourself up that funnel. So once you've done some direct action-based work at the bottom, you can then move into sort of the decision-making period around retargeting, and then beyond that, you can look at more broad brand activation or category activation sort of work. And on the budget splits, the point here is, are you spending all the money on acquisition, or are you going to separate out some of that and do some work on brand expansion too, audience expansion work, for example? So, as I said, at the top of the funnel in the AIDA model, not all of your customers are going to have heard of you, not all of your prospects, would have heard of you, your brand, or even know you have this particular offer. If you do some broad work at the top of the funnel, yes, it's going to not show that immediate ROI. But I think in digital marketing, we're quite guilty of this short-termism of looking only at channels that provide that ROI immediately, that instant gratification. If you siphon off certain proportions of your budget and do particular work on brand and sort of that activation work, then over time, that will drive down your cost per acquisition of all marketing activity as you become more frictionless to buy from. So yeah, here we've got here the translating strategy to digital marketing, really the point here is not fulfilling that short-termism and making sure that you're thinking broad enough to go across the right channels in the right formats and spending budgets in the right place too. Cool, so I've got a point here on where do the insights come from. Mindful of time, so I might gloss over a couple of these, but if there's any questions, please put them in the chat and they'll make their way through to me. There's plenty of sources of information out there on the web. Much of the data can be found for free, and I've got here a graphic from Google Trends. Obviously, it's quite high level. The more you pay, the more granular the data becomes. But there is data out there available for free. Google and Microsoft, for example, and the social networks are quite motivated to give you some data as well if you're already advertising with them. Generally, their algorithms will show how good their individual contributions are. So always take a balanced view on any attribution of any results you see. There's also third-party vendors out there offering display ad sort of insights. SEMrush has this under the display ad tools. There's other options available online. There's also then SEO and PPC research tools available as well. I'm sure many of you listening will already have your favorite tool. Hopefully it's SEMrush, and you'll know where to find that information already. The problem is, though, through listing all of these, a lot of them for their primary purpose are only channel specific. So an SEO tool will give you SEO visibility in search engines. A PPC tool will give you visibility on Microsoft ads or Google ads, for example. Looking on Facebook Insights or the Facebook ads platform is very focused just on Facebook. The challenge we have is that we really want multi-channel data, and we want to understand the interplay from one channel to another. It's really, really hard to find good quality data that fulfills sort of that broad brief. Yeah, we've worked for a while to sort of try to understand how to tie together the search engine optimization tool data with the pay-per-click data to understand what the opportunity is that we can relay to our prospects and our clients. And it's the case usually that if you add together the results of all those channels, you end up with a totally crazy number that's the total market, that's just not believable. Or you obviously are adding numbers together from different platforms, don't quite understand what that is. So we've been fortunate enough to identify the add-on module that SEMrush offers. It's called Competitive Intelligence, and it offers clickstream data. Clickstream data, for those of you who don't know, is sort of first-party captured data from real users. SEMrush have 200 million or more. It's captured from their devices and their ISPs. It's all anonymized. It's all totally above board. And they have this really unique proposition, which is a machine learning layer on top that basically fills in the gaps and makes the data set valid for the whole of the internet population in the countries it operates in. There were some clickstream data providers in the past that relied purely on clickstream, but with increasing sort of political and technological challenges, like in the UK we've got the GDPR, in EU it's the e-privacy directive, and I know that California have the CCPA, and there's obviously others in different districts and areas of the world. That sort of saw the demise of this competitive market, and few companies have made it through. SEMrush is one of them. So it's given us the data we've been looking for, basically, and it also gives a confidence interval or a accuracy score to go with it as well. So that gives us confidence to say that this site is big, the data accuracy is likely to be quite high, or this site is quite small, the accuracy is perhaps a little bit lower. But so long as you're comparing sort of apples with apples, not apples with pears, and making like for like comparisons, then actually this gives you quite good insight. And that's really helped our clients and ourselves as well. So all channel insights are really important because it avoids competing on sort of channel for channel terms with competitors. Obviously that's important. I made the reference earlier to a paid search competitive action over Black Friday. yes, you want to win on those auctions when you can, but you might be missing the bigger picture. You might want to explore more formats that your competitors are using. You might want to look for cross-channel campaigns to understand what the broader marketing strategy is that your competitors are doing, or perhaps estimate their budget relative to yours. You might want to understand like the market size or the cohort market size. Within the tool, SEMrush aggregate together 20 domains to say that this is your market. And that's quite neat because, as with all marketing data practices, there's a very long tail. There's a short head and a very long tail. So actually 20 is a good number. It's not overwhelming, and it gives you a good number you can work from. Say, this is the size of the market. This is how many visits are available in my close competitor set. It gives you a good idea of how many people you can go after. And putting that number in front of a brand or a client is actually quite powerful, because you can't get this data individually elsewhere. You have to add different things together, and you never total 100% basically. There's a few other things you can do as well. So understanding the power of brand, for example. Obviously, established brands have a lot of direct traffic. They have a lot of branded search traffic too. Startup brands don't get that. A few other bits you can jump into as well. So understanding display publishers, or looking at like referral traffic for PR effectiveness, and a few other bits and bobs too. Brief word on third-party data. It's not direct measurement. It's come via third party. So first-party data might be Google Analytics. Third-party data might be via any of these tool platforms. You can't compare the two together because they're using different definitions. So a user or a session defined by Google Analytics, obviously you can customize it, but it might be consecutive clicks within a 30-minute timeout window. That's not going to be the same for data that's captured in a completely different way across perhaps a completely different device. And also JavaScript trackers also do quite well to stitch together sessions to make this notion of a user. You might not get that notion of a user on other platforms. But with that in mind, so long as you use data from a platform like SEMrush versus the same source data, so if you're comparing competitor set A versus competitor set B, and using the same source for those two pieces of data, and they have a similar level of confidence in the accuracy, then actually you're comparing apples to apples, and actually that gives you some really good insight. And it sort of allays any concerns that, oh, there was a small spike here or a small dip there. Some of those things might be undetectable by a third-party data collection set, but actually, broadly speaking, looking at the bigger picture, those individual spikes or troughs might not be a big deal to worry about, and actually it gives you this good base to measure from across sets. Cool. So I guess the importance of a holistic view. So we've got a bit of an example here put together by my colleague, and what I really wanted to talk you through, it is an exaggerated example, is that back in impressions early days, we might have been servicing, for example, a PPC client, and here you can see on the screen we've got great impression share, good ROAS, loads of conversions, and we're happy with the cost. We're happy with click-through rates and cost per click. A performance marketing team in a silo or working towards a set plan with channel-specific goals will look to improve impression share and improve ROAS, reduce the metrics they need reducing, and make that channel more efficient. But we know that in sort of paid media, once impression share starts getting quite toppy to 90+%, you're in that territory of diminishing marginal returns. So the work that that team or that person perhaps could do in isolation isn't necessarily going to impact your broader marketing goals. So this is potentially where you could use a tool that looks at a broader segment of the market. So let's say, for example, in that example, the brand that was getting those great results on PPC is actually over to the left of this graph, this quadrant. So the x-axis of the quadrant is traffic volume, y-axis is growth. So no matter how fast they're growing, if they're topping out, obviously it'll probably be quite slowly. If their traffic share is low, then clearly there's something else to be done. And that is perhaps a great example of where we found ourselves a few times in the past, where we're driving efficiency, we're driving performance, but overall we're not having as big an impact on the brand as we'd love to be having. So yeah, you can see how this might be insightful. I'll probably run through this again depending on time, but the quadrant here shows, within a certain time period, say 6 months, the velocity of growth and established players in the market. So you can identify where their traffic, so who is close to you based on your domain. You can look organically or all traffic. This is all traffic, and understand where people are. Obviously, there'll be some marketplaces in here because they'll overlap with you and your customers, but there'll also be lots of direct competitors too. Another thing you can do when looking at all channel data is comparing yourselves to that cohort again. So for example, you might here look at, let's say, search, the purple bars, the third bar in the graph. Some brands here, so Adidas, rei.com, dicksportinggoods.com, for example, are over-indexed on search compared to the market average. And that market is the 20 closest domains, of which there's 5 here. Nike, for example, is doing very well in referral, and also relatively well in social, along with Adidas too, compared to the market. And there's certain other channels that are under-indexed too. This is obviously great as a snapshot, and it's great to start an initial conversation. I'm not saying this will answer all of your questions or your clients' questions, your boss's questions straight away. It certainly gives you something to dive into and say, well, our budget is this much, and we're getting good visibility, and for example, search is maxing out. We're really happy with that performance. We'll continue to work on it, but actually, if there were additional budget available, perhaps we'd consider doing some work in a different channel too. Cool. So how we use SEMrush. So I've got here just a whole different collection of slides. I'm going to whiz through. I think the bulk of the presentation is really me setting the scene and showing you how we've evolved and looking at how important these insights are. Now I'm going to show you some of the exact ways in which we do it, just mentioning the tool sets along the way. So within the competitive insights tool, you can find competitors quite easily by typing in your domain. It will match your customer overlap. So this is a really great feature where you can understand how many of your customers are also customers of a competitor. And by customer there, I just mean visitor. So it will find the highest overlap and show you those. You can also then add a custom example too if you want. So in that graphic, you can see the drop down. We've got custom lists in there as well that might be useful. This is great for discovery. It's also really great for having that conversation with your client or your boss, because they might think your competitors' top 20 are this list, and then you go to an SEO tool or a PPC tool and it's a different list because you've got marketplaces and you've got online-only competitors, for example, or the local competitor that your boss really cares about obviously doesn't get a look in on the national stage. So you can use this as a really great starting point to understand who truly could be overlapping with your customers. And that's obviously when you can dive into those individual brands to understand what's happening on their domain, where that traffic's coming from, and then obviously deep dive into the channel strategies too, so SEO, PPC, for example. You can do a lot of filtering and stuff as well, so you can look at time frame, location, for example, and then sort of deep dive into them. We use this primarily for due diligence when we're scoping new client partnerships, for example. We obviously want to make sure that we can have a good impact in the brands we work with. We don't want to just sign them up because because we have the opportunity to do so. We really care about making a good impact. So we want to immediately identify the industry or the organic competitors. So based on that overlap rate, or based on the organic side is based on shared search visibility. We want to understand where this brand sits. Is it high growth? Is it established? Is it a leader, for example? And where do the competitors sit around them? We want to make sure that obviously we're looking at the right region, but potentially if they're multi-region, see if that varies from region to region. But yeah, we basically want to use this as an initial due diligence piece. So it's a really great use case for any agencies out there. This is really useful depending on how your sort of sales cycle works. This is a good one as well. So as I said, it's based on sort of that external measurement, but you never get the opportunity to look at your competitor's GA account. So understanding where their traffic comes from is, it's really good. It's like lifting the hood of their car to understand what's powering it. I've shown this before, but you can look at their market benchmarking. You can see where that traffic's coming from per channel, what their traffic generation strategy is. And you can look at this over time as well. So go back a few months to see if the split has changed, and then deep dive into, for example, their social strategy. You can see here in the bottom of the screen. So here you can see that, YouTube is playing a big part in this market, the red bar. But some brands aren't doing that. So I guess the key point here is, can you identify any blind spots? Are there any channels that, a few people are playing in that you're not? Is it an opportunity for you? Is it something you want to compete head on with or not? This is a really good piece of insight. And again, it's a great conversation starter with whoever is setting the strategy to understand what's going on there. All of these previous figures are looking at percentages, but obviously getting to the hard numbers is also useful too. So in this example, ASOS is a clothing sort of marketplace, multi-brand site. We're comparing here against some top competitors. In this case, the competitors themselves are just brands. So they're being dwarfed basically by the actual traffic numbers. So just because on the previous slide, we're comparing the percentages, ASOS here is the second line in the competitor set under the market. Just because we're comparing with those on percentage terms, actually the relative difference in terms of actual numbers could be quite high. So we use this to understand how far away from the end goal could a brand actually be. For parity, for example, with a direct competitor, how are we doing compared to like marketplaces versus brand competitors? And we use this to help inform ourselves as to how long it might take for an organic or a paid strategy, for example, to come to fruits. I just did it. I just said strategy when I shouldn't have, but that's how easy it is. Here we've also got the sort of pentagram here as well. So we can see here how that looks based on channel overlap against each other. It's just a different view, but really useful to show how that one brand is doing versus the market, where you're over-indexing, where you're under-indexing, perhaps where the market is outspending you, where there's opportunities for you. And again, it's to help you find those blind spots. You can look at particularly aspirational competitors to see if they're doing something completely different or not. We've also got additional sort of market information here as well. So I won't dwell on this too long because it's obviously fairly obvious, but this helps you look at where their traffic's coming from and in which country too. So if you are working in an international brand, you'll have some of this data from first-party sources yourself anyway, but you can look at your international competitors to understand where their international traffic is coming from as well. So you can see how their international footprint is growing over time, perhaps, versus what yours looks like. And that may inform your strategy too. Certain countries you may not have thought of might be presenting good opportunities for traffic for your competitors, and that's obviously worth looking into. And we've also got the audience overlap as well. So this is just one visualization of this data. It comes in a table as well. I think I'll show that on the next slide. But this shows you, based on that clickstream data and the modeling applied to it, searches who look for prettylittlething.com, the green circle, overlap with ASOS. It's far too small for me to see, but a significant proportion, perhaps 40% there. They also overlap with boohoo.com, which is another fast fashion retailer here in the UK, perhaps even wider, I'm not sure. So this is great. You can see audience overlap. This is where things get very exciting for brands, because we know people shop around, especially if you're a marketplace or competing with a marketplace or your retailers. We know people shop around, of course they do. This quantifies it in the digital form, and obviously you can look to compare yourselves against competitors or perhaps influence this over time as well. We've also got the traffic journey as well, so sites in the downstream traffic journey and then the upstream traffic journey. So where do people come from and where do they go through within your competitor set? So you can see a proportion of shoppers come from Boohoo, Pretty Little Thing, and then end up shopping at, for example, ASOS or going elsewhere on Google. So this journey is really insightful to see where people came from and prior to their journey. Are they coming from marketplaces? Are they coming from competing brands? Where do they end up? Are they satisfied? Do they go back to a search engine, or do they go on to a competitor? Really sort of useful to spark some good conversations around this topic. So we use this to track growth of our brand's competitor sets over time. This is the share of visits report, really useful. You can do this for your top 20 or 20 you supply, or obviously you can have multiple lists too if you need to. And this shows you, of all visits available, how many visits does your brand get, and what does that look like in terms of specific channel splits as well. Obviously the channels are based on the SEMrush definitions of those channels too. But yeah, really, really insightful. See how your market share changes over time. Can you identify a longer impact of brand work? Obviously the holy grail here is to create a brand that people search for or go to directly. In some of the previous slides, you saw the big chunk of direct traffic going to those huge brands. Type in the brand name perhaps directly into a search bar, into their browser bar, and it auto-completing. How do we track that impact of brand over time on our competitors? We have that data for ourselves, for our own sites, but how do we understand how that's going for others? And obviously we can understand causal impact from doing activity on one channel to it then displaying on another. Again, we have that data for ourselves, but how do we monitor it for our competitors? So looking to the future, there's obviously a lot going on in the tech and legal side. I've alluded to this a little bit already, but browsers are sort of ending their support for cookies over the coming years. We've got the CCPA, e-privacy directive, GDPR, plenty of other versions of this as well, to sort of end this user level tracking. So attribution is going to get a little bit more difficult, and this traffic is going to get harder to measure. And you heard it here first, obviously, this type of traffic measurement offered by platforms like SEMrush isn't, it's anonymized prior to them receiving it. They're not under risk of getting sort of this level of insight. So actually, our investment in, well, I'm very comfortable with our investment in this sort of platform because it gives us this level playing field for measuring, despite perhaps our Google Analytics integrations maybe starting to suffer as some of this tracking data, is lost over time. This level playing field, although it's third-party data, all things will remain consistent on it. So actually that level playing field is a really great base for comparison. It gives you that true sense of consistency over time, even though it's not your own first-party data. It gives you that sort of that clear comparison. And so, yeah, I'm sort of hitting the end here, just coming up to the sort of 55-minute mark. But I'd really welcome any questions, so definitely get them in now if you can. But I'll just wrap up. There's plenty of free sources of data out there. I'm sorry I haven't shown you exactly for your business how you can find your data source, but hopefully I've inspired you to look at plenty of different sources, different channels, different tools of how to find them. I'd recommend SEMrush wholeheartedly as well. So definitely check out competitive intelligence if it's in your plan. Some great tools out there to sort of make things easier. And basically what I'm trying to encourage here is to think broadly, pivot if you need to, think as big as you can, because that's what's really going to help you grow ground on your competitors or marketplaces, or God forbid you're against Amazon, for example. Consider external impacts as much as you can as well. So the cookie examples come up a couple of times. I'm obviously in my technical bubble at the moment, but the cookie examples come up plenty of times. How do you keep your measurement consistent? How do you measure that versus your competitors? How do you know where the true sense of data is? Get comfortable with the data not being true, but just get comfortable with consistency, because that's going to lead to some really good things as well. Within channel selection, goes the same for sort of budget and persona targeting. Just make sure you're serving the right creative at the right time. Dictate that a little bit for your strategy as well. Obviously, give your your campaign teams that flexibility too. And yeah, just really the use case that we've found for the CI module has been really useful. Our clients really love it, and particularly on that sort of market share piece, and a number of the sort of versus market or versus competitor challenges. That's really helped us gain insights into where we can pivot our strategy with them. And like I said, I can't lay out for every business what your strategy might look like or what it should be, but use data like this to ask as many questions as possible to those who do know, or ask them to yourselves. Use those tools and frameworks to better understand, or to just make yourself question basically what you need to be doing, better understand what you need to do. And I think I'm just waffling, so I'll end there. Back to you, Tristan. But yeah, I'd love to have any questions as well.
That's fantastic, Aaron. I really like the bit that you just mentioned at the end, where it's like, not all of this data is 100% accurate all the time, but it's as I always say to a lot of people, it's more than what you were working with before. And obviously, you can start building that sort of like data stack of where you're getting it from and how you're using it. But if you're not, and I'm sure you've seen over your years of running your agency, that some people just aren't even using sort of some of the basic levels of data that are available to start building out who your competitors are, etc. So I think that's sort of a fantastic point, because I've raised, and people might jump in the comments now, I've raised a few times where I did a webinar before on what you can get from Google Analytics, and that you can find some sort of like age groups and genders and stuff like that. And people are going, oh, but that's limited because of these reasons. And I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That's fair enough. But it's given you a slight more direction, even if it's not all users that have entered your site and been captured through Google Analytics being represented in there, but you have a far better idea than you did before. And I've sat in meetings before where someone's gone away, spent thousands on market research. Our client is ideally this, that, and the other. And I said, oh, have you seen this in Google Analytics? And they went, oh, that's actually not far off what we've spent all this time figuring out without data. But anyway, I'm going.
So there's so many good points in there to pick up on. Like, for example, reliance on that first party data. We audit GA accounts all the time, and the amount of tracking issues in there pose their own problem, let alone the fact that obviously we're going to see some big changes in analytics, or Google Analytics in particular, over the coming years. You've got the point around investing in tons of market research. I mean, obviously, big brands can do that. They can afford it. And, real user research is always going to come top trumps to understand who your best competitors are, your closest competitors, for example, where people shop, where they, if they, shop online whilst in store, and cross-reference marketplaces and all that sort of stuff. But, we're dealing with a whole broad set of brands here that have a varied budget, and we need something that's it's got to be accurate enough. And for bigger, as I said, for bigger domains, the data accuracy is reported to be higher. Smaller domains, it's reported to be lower. But yeah, just I'm glad you said all that, because it makes me feel a little bit less of a fraud coming up here to talk about strategy without unveiling something brand new. Strategies, a lot of strategy, a lot of C-level coaching, all that sort of big business stuff generally comes down to asking the right questions at the right time. So if you can use these insights to pose the right questions to the right people, then you should actually start getting answers back from people you didn't think who even had those answers, really.
For sure.
It's nice to see lists of brands and stuff, but to some extent you can't act on that straight away. It can inform the vision, but you also need to focus on your channel strategy work too.
Awesome. So we've got time for maybe one question, hopefully a couple. I so apologise for getting your name wrong. Elsa Leadbetter has asked, is the quality of the clickstream data reliable across languages and countries? So what she's asking there is quality, i.e. reliability.
It's a really good question. I'm not prepared well enough to answer, but what I would say is that I'm sure it varies by country. There's an indicator available for each domain as well. So the data doesn't come back language specific. It just comes back in the UI based on the domain. So based on the domain's traffic level and the hit rate with their user panel, the 200 plus million people or devices, that's going to give you that feedback immediately. And I'm sure the team will do that via a demo to give you some good examples.
Fantastic. Well, we've actually hit the hour mark. So I'm going to wrap this up. I've enjoyed this massively. If we've got time, if anyone could just put a thumbs up in the comments, if you are going to start employing any of these, any of what you've learned today, just pop a thumbs up in there. It'd be great to know, that people are taking something away from these sessions. Also, Aaron, how can people find you if they want to come and hunt you down for that question we weren't able to answer?
That's a good question. Best place to reach me is probably on Twitter. So at Aaron Dicks, that's AARONDICKS, just as my name on screen looks, all one word. I'll be more than happy to answer questions into, it's evening time here in the UK, and it's afternoon in the States. So yeah, fire over any questions. I'll do my absolute best to answer everything I can or point you in the right direction if I'm not too sure.
Fantastic. And likewise, just put my name with an at the beginning if you wanted to chuck me a question. I'm sure in this instance, Aaron's your guy, but I'll be more than happy to help.
I'll send a few your way, don't worry.
If you give us 1 or 2 takeaway points whilst we wrap up here.
Yeah, I think the something we've done a lot recently is just using some of these tools to think a little bit more broader, a bit more long term. I'm working on some sort of coaching courses at the moment as well that's sort of all along the same themes, thinking about the long term, where do I need to get to, and then breaking that down in steps, because plans are great for, left foot, right foot, left foot, to get to the next week, month, quarter, whatever it is, your reporting period. But actually, if you set the vision that's ambitious for 3, 5, 10 years and break that down and say, right, if in 10 years I need to be this big, then in 5 years I need to be at least this big, 3 years, 1 year. And that really shapes and changes your outlook. You probably won't be doing the same thing you did prior to that exercise if it's worked out well. And, to get there, think about these extra tools, think about these data sets, think about what your competitors are doing, have a bit of a spy on them, see whether they're, a few steps ahead or behind perhaps. But yeah, that broader, longer term look is probably my biggest takeaway there.
Awesome. Well, I'll tell you now, we've got a whole bunch of thumbs up coming in the chat box. So I think you've really hit the nail on the head today. And shameless plug from me, there was a couple of people asking if we were going to dive into any more specific SEO tactics. And I'm actually going to be running a live site audit webinar with SEMrush on the 16th. Oh, I should know that information. The 17th of December. So I'll put the link in there. If you want your website audited by me, get submitted. But for now, Aaron, thank you very much for today. I've had a fantastic time. The audience, thank you for joining. You guys make it as much as we do for these sessions. So without further ado, good morning, good evening, or good night, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now.
Thank you. Goodbye.